Mr. Mayor and City Council. I've been asked to come here tonight to talk about the vacant property ordinance. We've had some concerns a lot lately since we just started enforcing this. Just a little background, the ordinance was actually passed in 2017. We didn't start enforcing this ordinance till about mid-2023. About that same time, we just had, the council had approved the new zoning ordinance, which ties into this vacant property ordinance I'll be talking about tonight. So I'll be talking kind of about both of them because they work hand in hand. If at any point anybody has questions, feel free to ask away.
And just FYI for everybody, Melanie gave us copies of what Martin's going to be going over right here.
So yeah, you have a copy of the ordinance and then a copy of the schedule of uses for zoning.
Did we bring extra for anyone that wants
Yes.
it? And if you guys want one to follow along, we have some up here. You never know how many people you're going to get, but I always liked. Just pass them. Mike, yeah.
What's up?
If anyone wants one out there. You guys want one? I just like us all to be on the same page. Unfortunately, those watching can't view it right now, but we can put it online after.
Thank you, sir.
It's already online.
It's on the website.
Yeah. So get to your City of La Junta website and pull it up.
That is correct. The ordinance is obviously with the municipal ordinances, and then the schedule of uses you can find with the zoning, which is part of the ordinance as well. So I'm going to try to make some hot links to that on the streets or engineering webpage so that people can just click on it and find that stuff immediately. So I am working on that. So to start off, the vacant property ordinance does involve both residential and commercial buildings. It was basically designed to deal with blight homes and buildings, and then also make sure that we're making the most use out of all of our houses, all of our homes, all of our buildings to make those available for residents and businesses. The vacant property talks about buildings that are unoccupied, unsecured, and most importantly, talk about vacant buildings. Vacant buildings are significantly below, or it can be defined as significantly below standard utility usage. They can also be sought out by seeing overgrown or dead vegetation, accumulation of trash, junk, or debris, abandoned vehicles, absence of items that show obvious habitation. So that's how we go about finding out if these homes are vacant. But most importantly, we can use utility usage to target some of these. And basically, we don't try to determine if one is about average. We just look for no utility usage, either water or electricity. If we find no utility usage, we then start digging in to find out if it's being used to be lived in or used as a commercial building. If we do see and determine that something is vacant, they are required to come in and register with the City of La Junta and the engineering department. Technically, they are supposed to come in and register 90 days after the building is vacant. Or you can come in 30 days after receiving a notice from the engineering department. Once that is determined, whenever you come in and fill out a registration, you have to give us your plan for what you plan to do with the property. In the ordinance, it talks about two different things, either demolition, if it is a blight, or what you plan to do as far as rehabilitation and returning that to the appropriate occupancy or use. There are a few exemptions to this. One of them is if you have an active building permit for the building, you are then exempt for a matter of time for as long as the building permit is active and is in use. Once it becomes finished, which at that point we would hope that the building is doing the things that are under the building permit, then I would assume at that point you would either sell it or move into it or do what you're gonna do with it. Another exemption is fire damage, and they're only exempted for about 90 days before you have to come up with a plan for demolition. And the other is if it's for sale with the licensed realtor. So how the engineering department is going about this is once we've determined a property to be vacant, we issue a vacant property notice. We mail these to the owners. At that point, if you receive a vacant property notice, we would ask that you come into the engineering department and talk to us about what your plans are for the property. For a residential property, you have to either be renovating it or rehabilitating it to fix it up to live in yourself, to rent it, or to sell it. We have been giving the engineering department an automatic 6 months to begin work on these properties. At that time, I do schedule a meeting with them on the property so I can take pictures of the property and make sure that we have those all put into our computer system so that we can then go back and schedule a 6-month date after that to go back and take a look at the property and make sure that improvements are being done. So anybody in this position will have all that information for them in the system at any point in time. After 6 months, we just want to make sure that they've made significant improvements or appropriate improvements to the building, and then we can look at possible extensions at that point. For commercial buildings, does anybody have any questions about residences? For commercial buildings, there's a couple different things here. A lot of the commercial buildings we've been finding vacant are due to utility usage. Once we find out a building is vacant due to utilities, we obviously send them a letter, and we do have a lot of people that come in and tell us, well, we have our utilities on, they're turned on and we're paying for utilities. But that doesn't prevent you from having a vacant building. It just means that you're not using it, is all that means. And that people think by having utilities on at either a residence or a commercial building means that they're exempt then from this, but that's not the case.
They're probably thinking about dormant fees.
Well, that's definitely true. Yeah, you wouldn't have dormant fees if you had utilities on, but then at that point, we try to find out what they're using it for, and a lot of people have been using vacant buildings, or not what we would consider vacant buildings, but people go and they buy these buildings, commercial buildings, and they use them for their personal use. They're storing their personal cars in them and that kind of thing, which is obviously then at that point against the zoning, because zoning doesn't allow for storage in any of the zones, at least in that capacity. I've had a number of people come in and say, well, I'm storing my vehicles in there, or I really wanted to save this building for when I retire so I can work on my cars and that kind of thing. But these buildings that are in these zones are designated for specific uses, which you can see on the special use table that I gave them, schedule of uses, I apologize. On this, basically, it gives you a list of everything that a building can be used for according to its zone. So when the people go out and buy these buildings, commercial buildings, and try to use them for their personal use, they're basically violating the our zoning rules. So I have to let them know that they can't just use a building for whatever they want. So
And wasn't it that a lot of buildings were owned around here by people that didn't even live here, so they're just paying the taxes on them and using them as a tax write-off, and so we were trying to get away from that to...
That is indeed very possible. There's a number of people. I'm glad that we've had a lot of people actually come in and talk to us and try to make this right. But we've had a lot of people that don't come in at all and just keep paying the fees, which I'll go over here in just a minute. But we do get a few people in here that are kind of irate, thinking that they can use any building that they want, regardless of the zone, for their own personal usage. And then the next item that I'd like to talk about is companies or businesses using other commercial buildings besides their own for storage. This is also not allowed. Storage is, warehouses are allowed in our industrial zone, which is actually not inside, it's more out of the industrial park. They are conditional in C1, but then that would have to be approved through the planning commission. But a warehouse is a building that was designed to be a warehouse. So that means you can't buy another building and turn it into a warehouse. It was never designed to be a warehouse. So in other words, the buildings that are existing were all meant to be storefront properties, commercial businesses used in that capacity. So we have several businesses in this community that purchased other commercial buildings and using them for storage. So we issue vacant property notices to these buildings as well. Obviously, they're vacant, they're not being used for the correct zoning, and this has kind of been a big issue in my office.
So what is the recourse for that?
So essentially what I tell these business owners is that I give them a schedule of uses, and that they're welcome to do anything that's allowed within their zone that's on this schedule of uses. It's not for me to say what they can or cannot do, but the zoning rules tell them what they can and cannot do. So I always give them this and tell them that their options are anything that are on the schedule or the schedule of uses. If they can't do something on the schedule of uses, they may want to consider selling it, or I'm not sure.
Monetarily wise, penalties, whether the penalty is
Okay, so the fees, they start out at $250 for the first year and increase $250 each additional year to a maximum of $1,000 each year.
There's also ways they can work with you to get that into the proper zoning, correct? When I say proper, like what it's intended for. So like if a business was using it as a storage, for example, if they were to put a storefront inside of it, or certain things like that, you would help them just to say what would be allowed, correct?
Yes. So again, I don't believe the purpose of this is for collecting fees, obviously. The purpose of this is to try and get as many storefronts out there and used properly. And it's same with residences. So if they come in and they tell me, this is my plan and I want to work towards this, I'm going to work with these people all day long, because I don't care about the fees. They don't mean anything to, I don't believe, to the city or this department. But as long as they come in and work with the engineering department to get to something that's acceptable for their zone, then I'm more than happy to work with them, as is the city.
And then can you tell us how many vacant properties you found since starting this?
So at this current time, we have 93 issued vacant property violations for residential properties and 25 for commercial. That doesn't mean we have all of them. I know we don't, but we're constantly working at trying to determine what other ones out there are vacant and finding more and more every day.
There were 25.
Mike?
25 commercial.
There were 25 commercial
Yes.
and 93 were the homes.
Residential. Yes.
So currently, do all these properties have either a dormant fee or utilities to them?
So I can't entirely speak about dormant fees as a utility department, but dormant fees should be assessed. I believe it's 30 days after a building has, or I guess a building or residence or commercial, is withdraws or stops paying their utilities. So after that 30 days, if no one else has moved into it or doing anything with it, we should be assessing dormant fees. Which has nothing to do with vacant properties at all.
Any other questions for Martin?
So I know this could be a little unique as far as the zoning goes and vacant. So what about, we got a lot of downtown areas that have storefronts, but with apartments upstairs, how does that apply if, say, the apartments are occupied, but the storefront or business below is completely vacant?
Or vice versa?
Or vice versa. Yeah. So, there are, residences are allowed in in our C1 and C2. So that if I can kind of try to get you to picture, everything along the highway would be considered a CS. Almost everything right behind CS is C1, and C2 is kind of our downtown area. Okay, so residences are allowed in every single one of those zones. So we can have, and it's perfectly fine to have those apartment buildings upstairs. But if that front, the storefront, or if is not being used, then it's considered vacant.
But if the apartment's not being used, that wouldn't be vacant, right? That would never get flagged.
They would still be vacant properties because the apartments, if they're not being used, not being rented is different, but not being used at all, that would still be considered vacant property.
So it'd be like a split?
It would still go to whoever the owner is. They would get a vacant property notice.
Did that answer your question, Jeremiah?
Sure. And again, if somebody's actively renting it out and they don't have tenants, or if they're wanting to rent a home or selling a home, again, that's not something we are going to enforce, obviously, at that point. But if it's just completely vacant and they're not doing anything to use it in any capacity, they would be issued a vacant property notice.
Two things. I just want to say thank you to both you and Marilyn in your office.
I couldn't tell if it was okay there.
I appreciate your responsiveness, and you've been great at answering questions about it. Also, just want to tell people, if they're sitting at home wondering, how do I know what I'm zoned? The most efficient way to do it is just Google La Junta, GIS. It takes you to the GIS page, which I promise is hours and hours of fun, searching all the maps for La Junta. But the third map down is the zoning district. And you can just put in an address of a property that you're curious about, and it lines up with the schedule of uses, and that is the source. There's a lot of sources that will tell you what various properties are, but as Martin and I have discussed, La Junta is the primary. It doesn't matter what the county says it is or the state says it is. It's what the city says it is for the purposes of our ordinance. So
That's correct. The county does sometimes have a different
land
zone
use.
or maybe a plan for what properties may be, but ours overrides theirs. So whatever our zoning is what is correct. And as she stated, we do have a website that's very easy to navigate. It's very nice. You can, like she said, you can type in any address and pull it up, and it'll tell you the zone that you're in. Or you can scroll around, find your property on the map, click on it, and it'll show you the zone, along with other information like ownership, property ownership, and those kind of things.
Hours of
It's a very good tool. It's not actually one I've seen. I'm sure maybe the bigger communities have it, but it's quite surprised to see it here. It's an incredible tool, very useful.
Any other questions on that side of it? You're not going anywhere yet, Martin.
Okay.
And I do want to talk about the nonprofits.
Okay.
And yeah.
So I did want to bring that up. We had a question just about zoning, and Marilyn received a call. I also want to say thanks to Marilyn. Marilyn is awesome. We did have a question about zoning. Marilyn was called about a question regarding nonprofits. If you look at the schedule of uses, if you go down to the, I believe it is, it's under residential business uses. You can see, if you go about 4 from the bottom of that, churches, nonprofits, and religious education buildings. Basically, nonprofits are not allowed in certain zones, and the reason for this is that they don't provide tax money to that district. So essentially, I was talking about this with someone earlier, it's like having a vacant building. They don't produce and they don't contribute the taxes to that district like all the other businesses do. So that it makes it inefficient to have a nonprofit organization within that district. That's why they're not allowed.
And the ones that are there, are grandfathered in, correct?
Yes.
So, because someone will say, well, this is there, how are you going to say that?
Which again, the new zoning just took place in April of 2023. So this just changed, so that going forward, that everyone has to adhere to this, to the new zoning.
And that was a lot of work. What did that take, a year and a half to be working? And we didn't have one meeting a month, we had several each month,
Yes.
going over it. And I specifically remember when we discussed, churches, nonprofits, and we can't, within our business district, have them, primarily take over.
Right.
Down there, but the grandfathered ones in, and I think that's where. And then I think maybe that question to Marilyn was confusing because I don't know, because we group things together, kind of in like sense. We're not saying that the nonprofit is a church or a religious. We're saying it's within that group.
Correct. So any nonprofit, if a recycling nonprofit center wanted to start up in our C2 district, we would have to say, sorry, that's not allowed. So that's any nonprofit, exactly.
And thank you for all your hard work on all of this throughout
Oh,
the
absolutely. Happy
past
to help.
couple years.
Yeah, so Martin went to our planning commission and said a lot of this, except for this last part. And so that's great, but council is where this information needs to be shared because we get more views on council, and then you guys are the ones that are going to get the questions from the public a lot. So we wanted to make sure that this was available to everyone.
Just one more question. Can you explain the difference between permitted and conditional use? Who decides?
So on the schedule of uses, you have an NP or an NC and P. N is not permitted, C is conditional, and P is permitted. Permitted means you don't have to ask for anybody's permission, you're good to go. C is conditional, and you would have to come to the planning commission, and you have to ask for permission from the planning commission, who would then vote on whether that would be permitted in a particular zone. So you would probably, I'm just going to encourage, if anyone has any questions about vacant properties or the zoning, please come into the engineering office and we'll be more than happy to explain any of this to you. If at any point you do see that you might be eligible or think you might be eligible for conditional use, come in and see us. We'll get you set up to be put in front of the planning commission and have them have a vote on it.
Any other questions for Martin there? Okay, Martin, I need you to take that engineering land use hat off and tell us about asphalt.
Okay, wonderful, asphalt. Okay, streets department, asphalt. The big change for asphalt this year is that our asphalt provider is now, it's not All Right anymore, is now United, that's correct, thank you. United, right, I can't remember, United. They have changed their policy in that we will no longer get asphalt of any quantities on Thursdays. That's no longer a thing. So in order for us to get asphalt, we have to order 60 tons or more for them to fire up. I can tell you right now that most of our patching jobs take 3 to 10 tons, 20 max. We never have a 60-ton job unless we're flat out doing a whole new job where we're tearing out a street and replacing a whole street. So what that means is that we just kind of have to be on the watch. We are notified daily of when they are running, so that whenever they do run, we're just gonna have to stop what we're doing, which is a major pain, and do asphalt instead. So that it's kind of not been a fun thing to deal with, but a new thing. Second thing is asphalt isn't provided in the winter. I know some people think that during the winter we can just, people are wondering, why aren't we out there fixing the asphalt? Why aren't we out there fixing asphalt? We don't have it. We have a mix called a cold mix, which we go and we try to fill into some potholes, like especially the big ones that are really bad. And that may last, it may not. It's not the best stuff, but it's definitely there to help us get through the winter. And then obviously even through the rest of the year, whenever asphalt's not provided on Thursdays anymore. So they just started making asphalt generally in April. So when people are like wondering why aren't my things being fixed, the biggest reason is we just got asphalt in April. After that, we do the best we can with the jobs with the concerns that people have called in. We'll start working on those things, and then obviously the major stuff. Does anyone?
Oh, yeah, I have questions. How much is asphalt per ton?
It is, I believe, $105 a ton.
And we have to order 60 ton at a time?
Yes.
And roughly, what is it, just your average city block, what would it be to tear up that asphalt, put down new, roughly? I know there's lots of factors in there, but we're just trying to get the folks listening at home kind of an idea of what it actually costs.
So when we redid Carson, we did 4 blocks, and that cost us about $150,000 for 4 blocks. So what is that? Approximately $50,000 a block, probably. But we also did replace some base, which that's something that we have to do. If a street doesn't have the correct foundation, we have to replace it with what it should need. So it's very, very expensive.
And that eats up a lot of your budget, doesn't it, Mark?
All of it, pretty much. Yeah.
And when he talks about the cold mix that they have, it usually lasts if the weather is just cold. If you get any type of moisture, snow, anything like that, it's gone. It's so they do fix a lot of them during the winter as best they can. But once you get any type of weather, you can't tell that they fixed it, and it's right there again.
That's true. Very true. Does anybody have any questions about the asphalt part of it? I just wanted to talk a little bit about the upcoming projects that we do have coming up. We're getting ready to work on June 2nd. We'll begin our project at Conley Road, which is around Walmart. I know everybody's gonna love that. The Walmart entrance on the highway will be closed both ways for approximately, we're hoping it'll take us about a week. We're gonna go in, rip out the current asphalt from the highway to Rogers Road, which is the first stop sign. And we're gonna replace it with a much thicker asphalt layer and then replace the base if needed. After we finish Conley Road, we plan on fixing 6th Street over here by the library. That'll be the next project after that. And then after that, we are gonna work with the county on replacing 2nd Street, which is in front of the jail. After saying that, I just wanna say thanks to the county. The county has been tremendous. They've been a very amazing partner to work with. The county commissioners, Tim Noggenshoe and Rob Oquist, have been amazing to work with. Lex Nichols and Darren Garcia have been absolutely wonderful, helping us with the equipment we don't have, helping us with trucks. When we pave streets, they come out and they help us transport the asphalt to the paver when we're paving. They've been absolutely amazing and a wonderful partner.
Is that going to have curb and gutter?
On 2nd Street?
Yeah.
So I will say that on Conley, we are going to do curb and gutter to CDOT's right away. They would not allow me to do curb and gutter all the way out to the highway. They would only allow us to go up to the right of way. On 2nd Street, I asked the county if they would work with us on possibly contributing to the cost of curb and gutter on the north side of 2nd Street. They were open to that. They're trying to work on getting money from a grant that I believe Tim Noggenshoe knows about, and is trying to see if he can get even parts of the street paid for, as well as curb and gutter, and even possibly a sidewalk. So I'm waiting for them. I've given them pricing for what all that'll cost. So he's looking into seeing what they can contribute, or what the grant may contribute. And if not, I know that they've already talked about their willingness to work on curb and gutter with the city on that north side of the road.
I have a question. What about the side of 10th Street going up?
Okay, so I didn't mention, those are our big projects. Here in the next, I'm hoping if we have time, if not, we'll have to be pushed back after June. But we have 2 other projects we're working on, and that is one of them. So on 10th Street, we've cut out a section on the north side of the road that we're gonna tear out. We're gonna asphalt from the road over to the sidewalk. Hopefully that'll help us. If it should flood again, the water should go over the sidewalk instead of undermining it and taking out the sidewalk. So, and then on the other side, we're gonna go about 4 feet to the south and pave that as well.
Okay.
So that's coming up hopefully in the next couple weeks. That may be pushed off, I'm not sure. The other project is the park on the west side of the park. We're going to go through, clean that up and re-asphalt and patch it up so that it's nicer, because it's in pretty bad shape. So
City
those are our
park
other
or
2 projects. So
Which
we'll-
park?
The
City park?
The city park, yes.
And then if someone had a pothole that they were concerned about, Martin, what would you suggest they do?
Well, thank you for bringing that up. You're more than welcome to call the engineering office, but we also have a form on our website under the engineering tab that allows you to fill out a form. What we do once we get that form via email, we automatically put that into the system, into our work orders, and send that to the street department, and then it's tracked in our system what potholes we're getting, when they're fixed, with a date timestamp.
It's pretty cool. Thank you, Martin.
Sir?
And this might be part of Michael's report, but what is going on 6th Street?
So they had, I mean, they're basically, their water line is bad, and now they're replacing it. So
Okay.
they initially fixed it, they're fixing it.
Yeah, I'll talk about that later, but we'll go ahead. It didn't matter to me.
Yeah, they're basically replacing it, and then we'll go through asphalt.
Okay.
So
Yeah, basically, the issue with that, and that was part of my report later, but things that we're talking about right now, they go in to start making a repair, and they found more wrong, and more wrong, and more wrong, and more wrong. So it's just kind of a systemic thing that they're trying to fix, but the problem keeps getting bigger and bigger. That's basically what's going on.
And in addition to that, after they do a repair, it has to take so long to settle before you guys can actually put the asphalt on top. Otherwise, it'll mess all up, right?
yeah, they have to definitely compact it right, or we're gonna have issues. But they'll compact their part of it, their holes that they dig, then we'll go over the top, replace the base, compact it the way we need to compact it for the street. So, and then, I guess the only other thing I'd like to talk about is the signs. I don't know if any of you guys have noticed the new signs out and about, but we have a number of streets that now have street signs. We've replaced a number of street poles. We've added a few stop signs on some major streets that were having some crash issues. But just recently, they replaced all the poles on San Juan and Colorado. So we used to have these old green poles, a lot of people probably saw or have seen, and you might have seen the poles at an angle. Some of the stuff looked really bad. But the poles were called U-channel poles. Well, we're replacing all those old poles with a 2-inch by 2-inch square metal pole. That is also has a breakaway at the bottom. So if anybody hits it, the sign breaks away. They look much cleaner, much better, and are safer for traffic.
And what has that done to your sign budget, Martin?
Well, my sign budget hasn't been the best, but we do what we can with what we have. But this year, one of the first things I almost do every single year in January is I automatically start buying new signs and replacing stuff that we have up there. So I've already burned through all of the sign budget for this year, but I think we've done a lot.
It looks really good.
A lot of signs, and I think it's really, in my opinion, I think it's cleaning up the city.
It's been a while since we heard that song. Any other questions for Martin? No? Thank you so much, Martin.
For all you do, Mark. Are you gonna be in a meeting right now?
What's that?
Are you leaving?
No, I'll sit there.
I guess you're not leaving now, Martin.
Get him on the spot.